to all of you, and a special one to Anat. I see Anat. I see you also there, and thank you for the privilege of thank you for the privilege of being able to talk to you guys. I would like to start with saying, you know, if you think of South Africa and sunny South Africa, in that you think of a lot of things, but not necessarily of apples per se. If we look at the map of where you guys are also and us, you can see where we are. You are a bit closer to the equator than us, but it is yeah. And if we look closer, you will see the South African industry consists of about 25,000 hectares, of which 11,000 is in an area where there is insufficient winter chilling. I am going to focus with my talk mainly on the EGVV area. The EGVV stands just for 4 towns or in that area, and it's just the Elgin, Gerbo, Villiersdorp, Vryboom area. You can see it's very close to the coast, but I want to say something sort of before I really start to talk about that, and that is that if we take Africa, for example, and we look for areas where we can grow apples, South Africa will not necessarily be in that thought process at all. You will mostly look for areas like in the north of Italy, and I think the same goes for Israel. So if we make a small comparison between our area, the EGVV, and the Bolzano region, we see both are roughly 250 meters above sea level. But if we start looking at the differences in maximum and minimum temperature throughout the year, we see that in Bolzano, they have about a 12-degree difference in summer and a 9-degree difference in winter, which is not very much different from us. We are about 10 degrees in summer as well as a 10-degree difference in winter. If we ever start to look at the specific maximum and minimum temperatures, we see a vast difference. In summer, the maximum temperatures reach an average of 28 degrees in summer, minimum 16 degrees, and in winter, it goes down to a maximum of 4 degrees and a minimum of -5 degrees. Whereas in our case, we reach in summer an average maximum of 25 degrees, minimum of 15 degrees, which is fairly similar still. But in winter, we only have a maximum of 6 degrees. And a minimum of 6 degrees, which is vastly different if you look again at the 4 degrees and the -5 degrees. Okay, so that is then no wonder that we get a lot of delayed foliation. To give you an idea, we get delayed apical development. You can see there the top part of the photo. It's much far behind those of the bottom of the shoots, where you can see already leaf development, and you can see there from closer up, those buds are not even thinking of moving yet, although you are almost full bloom at the bottom of the basal part of the tree. But if you look closer, and you will see that even between the basal parts, there's also variation, in that you will almost see everywhere in this region where you will have fruit as well as young flowerlets, and young fruitlets that is still just becoming. You can see there's a lot of difference in terms of time between the fruits that will be finally in the same box probably. If you look at the older trees in South Africa, you will see a lot of the more basal dominant open vase type of trees. with a lot of problems subsequently. You can see the branch, very strong development there. This is just perhaps a more typical tree. It's more towards the center leader, but very strong formal branches. So if we look at some apple fruit quality problems related to our climate, we cannot miss sunburn, which will probably also be similar to you guys, as well as poor color development due to our lack of very cold temperatures of 10 degrees temperatures during the coloring period, as well as a lot of mixed maturity. Now, our markets are mainly overseas, so we have to get our maturity right to enable us to get to not get a lot of progressive defects. So looking at sunburn, we previously used a lot of heading cuts, stimulate growth, and we just got more overshadowing, which was a problem in itself. Whereas we recently realized, you have to fight fire with fire, and we developed, we investigated drape nets, and we saw very, very interesting effects. Here's just an example of my first year of study in the drape nets. You can see the vast increase of the class 1. The K1 is just the class 1 that will be able to, we are able to export to Europe. Increase of about 52% to 72%. And it was repeated the next year. And what you can see here is that the increase in the class 1 came from both the class 2 as well as the class 3, which otherwise would have been burned and would only be used for industry use. What we also noticed was an increase in green color, with a Granny Smith under the nets. These, by the way, was done on Granny Smith apples. And you can see the pack out, just looking at the green color, was increased with about 10% increase between the control and the drape net. Another one negative thing that we found was that there's a definite decrease in fruit size. However, it was never an economic consideration. The difference was small, but it was consistent. Here's just the influence on some defects. If you look at bruising, I was worried that the fruit will be more bruisable under the net, but it was not the case. It's very similar. Blush was definitely decreased under the nets. There was less blush under the nets. The sunburn was one of the biggest differences in terms of that. And one that I didn't put in here was codling moth. Codling moth, after I put the nets up, and the codling moth went down, and it was not necessary to spray or to treat it again. And it is similar to what was found in Europe. So this is now in rands per ton, but in whatever monetary value we put it in, it will be similar. You can see the average rand per ton in the control of the 1 year was 3867, and it's almost roughly 1,500 or more, an increase from there. And the next year, it's also more than a 1,000 rand increase in value. And if we boil that down to our income per hectare, it's roughly 80,000 rand increase per hectare, which was one of the best results we ever got on trying to reduce our sunburn effects. Now I want to take you to the numbers of our industry to show you roughly a broader picture of what is happening and what is changing in our industry. What you will notice if we take our wood crow numbers, remember now this is the good, the bad, and the ugly all together of the orchards. You will see there's a roughly, we're lying close to 50 tons per hectare, between 40 and 50 tons per hectare. But that is total tonnages. If we look at what out of what this tonnages consist of, you will see it is actually a very low export. Sorry. Very low exports, whereas the local and the juice, which is the industry apples, is dominating. However, if you look at the income numbers, the income is still economical viable, but if you compare that with the inflation and what happens with the cost of producing apples, it is really a challenge. It's becoming a challenge, and in future it will be a problem. So I started looking more and more at our class 1, because the value of our class 1 apples is so much more. In this case, just the pink lady apples, where you can see there's a vast difference between the value of the total crop versus the class 1 crop. If we look at what is happening in the rest of the world, in America, the class 1 or really high value apples are lying between 70 to 80 tons per hectare. In Europe, it lies between 50 and 60 tons per hectare, whereas our own crop is only lying roughly at about 20 tons per hectare. So that prompted us to look closer at what might be the reasons. And one of the things that stood out was that in Europe, you have a much more slender canopies, and in America, much more slender canopies, and much less of the orchards consist out of more sort of formal branches, lower densities, more growth, more structural development in those trees. Whereas in South Africa, you have a much more stronger representation of trees with strong canopies, big canopies, and much less orchards with slender canopies. That prompted us to, and now if I can just give you a quick overlook at the differences of those orchards, you can see that in the past, the guys planted really wide, and that was quite 10-15 years ago. In present, the past 10 years probably was mostly 4 meters by 1.5 meters, whereas in future we will probably never plant wider than 3.5 meters. With a planting distance of about 1 to 1.25 meters. There is some V structures going up and in production, but sometimes the people are more negative towards that and doing more the vertical structure, like a Vigorous system, for example. They're just older trees again, and in that, those trees are light in heavy pruning regimes. A lot of knowledge that people need to develop that, so over time it developed in just more growth, more overshadowing. Your tree had normally half spherish form with a low surface area ratio to volume, and that was just you needed Solomon's wisdom and Job's patience to handle or to give the instruction of how this tree should be managed in our labor environment as well. So if you look at the standard of the past 20 years, 4 by 1.5 meters, the people normally had the expectations of high density planting, but the management approach of a wide system. So they planted them wide, and they had large dimensions to cover with a very small tree. And I think that is one of the reasons why they often settled to say, well, we only need a height of about 80% of our row width. You still had a lot of permanent structures. The tree shape were more rectangular. The argument was for better light distribution. It never really worked. The tree depth was sometimes vast, 3 meters and it led to an origin of people that wanted to manage the trunk, around the trunk, and wanted to clean that region around the trunk, and it never really increased the light distribution of the tree itself. And there was a very negative cycle of people not wanting to remove strong branches, and then if they don't remove them, you get an increase in growth, and it is sort of a cycle that starts over and over again of the tree just becoming more and more dense, quality going down, and that is why we probably sit with a class 1 percentage or tonnage of only 20 tons per hectare. And if we look at what is happening with quality standards in the rest of the world, it's just going up. Whereas we started with the Pink Lady being about 20% coverage of red. Now the people are thinking of making it more towards 60% almost. So we are not in a position to compete with the rest of the world. However, our tonnage did increase. If we look at the 4 by 1.5 meters, you know, they started things like the 60 tons or the 100-ton club. It was possible now with a higher density, but the income was not spoken about. The income per hectare really reached a plateau. Whereas here you can see a much higher density planting. This is planted 3 meters by 1.2. And you can see this has the potential of really producing good quality fruit. I will, in the second talk, explain more about the ifs and hows and whys. The future is going and is being more innovative. People are looking at tall spindle trees, 3 meters, 3.5 meters to 1.2 meters. Guyo systems are also going up, double spindles, V's with earlier cropping, and much higher pack outs at, for example, UK standards, EU standards, and also larger fruit sizes, whereas every tree now doesn't have the strong workload of having to produce the high number of fruit per tree. And also, again, from a management point of view, is this instructions are becoming more simple and singular. So you get an increase in income per hectare, in efficiency and profitability. Yes, it's an example of an orchard we planted next to each other. One was 4.3 meters by 1.8 meters. The other one just a bit narrower, 3 meters by 1.5 meters. And you can see there's a vast difference in the cumulative tons per hectare over time, a much easier reach of your economic values. So what we saw is, yes, the capital layout is much higher as you grow more trees per hectare, but your net present value over time is much higher, and it's a much better investment. We were curious on why the rands per hectare is so much better. In the one trial we did, we looked at planting distances, and we saw that the income was definitely much higher. And the reason for that was, and I can just tell you that the rootstock is not a very good rootstock. And we just saw that the percentage of the total crop of fruit, more than 60% color, was just 90% versus 60%. So that is, I think, where that income increase lie. The second trial, we looked at the rootstock. We just looked at M9 versus this 793 rootstock, and you can see there's an increase of about 60,000 rand between the two rootstocks. So it definitely does play a huge role in looking at what, before you plant, to first consider, what exactly and why do I want to plant this rootstock or this planting distance. It's just an example again of the difference in color development of the rootstocks. So in conclusion, I recommend, one spend time on your orchard design if we are serious in staying competitive. I think that's a very important thing in our country. And discussions, and also in the same sentence, the discussions and controversies between orchardists and specialists about planting distances and training systems for given fruit species undoubtedly began with the first orchard, and they will probably last as long as fruit trees are planted. So, yeah, ending my first talk, I just want to ask if there's any easy questions.
I just wanted to ask, when did you put the nets up? At what, after flowering, or in the
Yes,
first
Alon, we put it up end of November, so that'll be for you guys end of May. I did not want to put it up too early to bother with a flower initiation, because before we did that trial, we did a permanent structure trial over existing orchards, and we just got the increase of vigor and a decrease in terms of our crop. So I think it's quite important to not put it up too early.
I have a question. The drop net, what are the specifications as far as color and the percentage of shading is concerned?
I only worked with black nets, and that was a 20% shading.
All right. And it's good for all varieties, or mainly maybe on the green varieties you put higher shading like Granny Smith, or what?
Yes, I did my trials on Granny Smith. I was not, I was not interested in the color, but what I see is with the same nets on over something like Fuji, you don't really get you do get the amount of color, but the intensity of the color is much lower.
All right. And regarding rootstocks, do you have a single rootstock for high density and other rootstock for lower density, or it's more sophisticated and you have a selection of rootstocks according to densities and varieties?
We do have a selection of rootstocks. In our case, we don't really have a lot of good soil. So we can often get away with a more vigorous rootstock in our soil, even if we use it for high density planting.
Like 793 or what?
Yes, but 793 is very, very bad. We don't really use it, for future plantings.
So what do you use as a vigorous rootstock?
For vigorous rootstock, we have CG rootstock 778, which we recommend. And this for the more dwarfing varieties, we use a lot of M9, but there's also Cornell Geneva 890, 41, 969 that we also consider, for the more medium and lower or higher density plantings.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I think you can move on, Anton.
All right. Omer, I just want to jump out of this talk and into the other one. I just want to see if this can work. Can you see the presentation? It's closed. Now, Omer, I will have to go out first again. All right. right. From here.
Yeah, I'm here. Just a second.
I will just go out first and then start again like last time.
Okay, no problem.
Right. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. We can see. No.
Hey. Wait.
Okay.
Can you see it now?
No. No, not yet. It's not there. I can't see it anyhow.
Can you see it now, Mer?
Yeah, now we can see. Yeah.
Right. I've recently driven behind this truck, which stated you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. And I think it's very true. You know, we have a lot of orchards that are very poorly producing if you look at our numbers, but we are looking at some answers. So I hope I might give you some practical scientific solutions for young apple trees that were given us a lot of challenges in the past few years. I will refer to leader extension, to uniform lateral development on nursery tree trunks, that is in the first year of planting, to force late buds. We'll look at the concept of polling or stem renewal, as well as same season lateral development. Now, I think the first question would be, if I have a new orchard, what do I want? What is a definition almost of a good orchard? And without referring really to the dimensions, the first thing I want to see in a new orchard is uniformity. I want to see a strong leader developing. I want to see a lot of lateral development to help the different branches to actually compete against each other, to enable me to use that against the branches so that they cannot run away and become the one stronger than the other one. So if you look at the whole formation of apple, and apple leaders, it is the result of acrotony because of our branching habit that we have in our apples being more proleptic with a season of dormancy in between our different growing seasons. So conditions of sufficient winter chilling will normally inhibit the bursting of our basal buds, whereas delayed foliation is a modification of that in the situation of insufficient winter chilling, which give us, in that situation, a much more basitonic tendency in the apple tree, where you get a lot of development at the bottom part of the tree. So if I can draw a little diagram for you, in the insufficient winter chilling situation, we normally plant a whip tree. In your first leaf, we get quite some strong basal development, even though we always put our trees in the cool store, so they can give it sort of wat is kunsmatig so that we can give you some winter chilling, but it is artificial. A lot of people have the tendency of bending those branches down and trying to overcome this basal dominance, but they don't really get it right because the next winter will again be insufficient winter chilling, and the whole cycle will just keep on with more growth at the bottom of the tree, and you will end up in the third leaf normally where the people get a first crop. And already in that crop, you will see a lot of overshadowing and the fruit being less colored in the center of that overshadowed tree. If you look at the final tree height, there will always be a lot of sort of challenges in terms of reaching that height. And that is why I think previously in the older times that the people planted wider and wider so they can at least use the basal growth of the tree. If we look at here's just an example of a young apple tree. There's the growth tip with very, very short leader growth. You can see even in the first leaf, the strong basal branches that developed there, even though it was bent down. You can see the relationship of the lateral towards the trunk is too thick. It has to come out. You can see if you look at older trees, it's a similar situation. Strong basal branches. You can see them. Almost all of them has to come out with a leader that's almost non-existent at all. Under sufficient winter chilling, the situation looks a bit different. Normally, the people start with planting a feathered tree. In the first leaf, they sometimes get a first crop, but they get strong development in the apical part of the tree. Second leaf, the situation is just repeated. You get a nice slender tree very easily. The third leaf, it is again repeated, and you get a very nice situation where you reach your tree height very easily, and normally the maximum yield in year 5. Here's an example of a picture I took in Italy, in the Piedmont region, and you can see these first leaf. There's already a crop on those apples, but you can also see there's a strong leader developing there. Here you can see, even though those angles are quite acute angles, because of the strong development in the apical part of the tree, the angles are not running away. You can see the relationships are still very soft, and the trunk is still the dominant part of your tree. Here you can see a second leaf tree in Italy again. Again in Saluzzo, very nice development apically, and you can see the crop already in the second leaf as well. And there you can see again, even though those relationships of the lateral will be worrisome in our situation, because we will know that they will just become more and more thicker and thicker, is not the case in Italy, because you get the dominance of the apical part of your tree. So if we look at this situation where you have sufficient winter chilling, you can see it is easily the height that you get in that in your leader growth is about 20% of your final tree height. If we take, for example, a similar row width, you will see that is about 20%. But in our case, we only get about 10% in a normal situation. So our objective was to see whether we can't increase that leader growth to about 20%, from 10% to 20%, and keep that situation going in the second leaf and the third leaf in order to reach our tree height much more easier. So I did a lot of trials in newly established orchards, and where any late growth that was observed was removed directly after planting. There you can see why we do it. You often get the late growth because of our higher temperatures that stays high too late. And so I removed that with the tipping treatment, just removing that last growth so that you can have a bud that is viable to start growing as soon as possible. So, and then I just removed the second, third, and fourth position from the most distal lateral bud, just in order to put more dominance into my leader. I trialed a lot of different plant growth regulators on that green tip just after green tip stage. It was done just with a spray bottle, and I still use spray bottles, in the commercial orchards. And the leaf service was just covered to the point of runoff. And of all the different treatments, the use of GA4 and 7, 400 milligrams per liter on a weekly basis did the best. It was about 10 applications we used. And the increase we got in terms of our leader growth was immense. It was almost twofold. And the application of that same treatment is vast. If you take a guyo, this is a guyo that's now in the second leaf, and you can see the leader growth is very, very even, much nice and evened out. So it was a nice tool that we developed there. Another use of the GA that we found very helpful was the use of GA3 at about 600 milligrams per liter. Wherever you really want to get a lot of shoots to grow, whether it is an older tree or a young tree. Normally, if I have a planting that was done this spring, I use 1 or 2 applications of that GA3. I spray it throughout my tree from the tip to the lowest development of the little shoots, and that will substitute that week's GA4 and 7. It helps a lot to get that young tree to not stand still and not have just a little short spur, but to have a little or have a little branch rather than a spur. Otherwise, some of those branches, if they are too few, they will become too dominant. And you can see even on the older tree here on the right-hand side, you can see that development there was stimulated by winter cuts. And when they started growing, we applied this GA3, and now you have a very nice, even development there. Another problem or challenge we have is blind wood. Even though you can stimulate that terminal bud, you can still have a lot of blind wood. And yes, we use a lot of chemical rest breaking, but it's still a problem. So often you have late buds that just refuses to grow. And there was very nice work done by Steve McCartney from New Zealand. And they used Maxell together with notching to get the blind wood to grow, which works very nicely. But the one problem they found was after about 4 weeks of the bud break, you you lose the effect. And often this takes time to do, so you really need more time often to get this right. And they used 80 mils per liter Maxell. That's about 1,520 milligrams per liter 6BA. And luckily, one time, one of my growers made a huge mistake, and he was already in December, so that will be your June. And he also had a lot of blind wood, and he used the raw product. He made a huge mistake, and I just realized that might be a solution, and it is. We are now able to use, just with higher concentrations of about 30 to 40% to go on much later into the season. And even you can see here that development was now on an old bark. So your effect on old bark is much poorer than on young bark, but with a higher concentration, it is still possible.
Anton.
Yes, Omer.
So I have a question. We also tried Maxell, the raw Maxell in our orchards, And we could see that sometimes if you apply it more than once, you get a lot of callus, like you know, a lot of callus grows, and it's a big problem for the tree. It looks like a bad, I don't know, greedling of the tree. Do you notice this kind of thing?
I hear what you're saying about the callus. I only apply it once. So what we found is if it doesn't really work if you only use the max cell. So we use the notching as well. So but we do it nice and deep into the white wood, and then we apply the max cell once, and it works. But I don't really commercially use the raw product on the. I would rather start a bit earlier if there's a problem than only using the raw product. It's very expensive as well. Another, perhaps one of the biggest challenges we have is this whole tree structure that we have, this sort of a broad-based tree, very strong basally, and we developed a way of countering that system, and it's called trunk renewal or stem renewal or poling. It's you cut the tree that it looks like a pole. And the one important thing of that is to never do it too early. In our situation where you have had insufficient winter chilling, you wait for the lead to start growing. And that is also one of the reasons why I tip my trees in winter. In early August, late July, I tip them and I get a very nice quick response to the cut and a much earlier development of that leader. And as soon as that leader has grown about 7 to 10 centimeters long, or in an older tree where that leader has developed also about 7 centimeters or so, then we go and we do something very severe and we cut off all the lateral branches. You can see it looks terrible. Many of the older growers want to run away at that stage. You can see the cuts are very strong. We don't really put anything on the branches. It is not really important. But one thing that is important is because that cut is made in spring, you really have to turn your shears around. So the cutting part of your knife or your shears comes from the bottom part. So you're going to have a nice clean cut at the bottom of your stub and not on top of it, or not the other way around. You can see in that picture that bark was damaged at the bottom. I don't know if you can see my cursor. You can see that bark was hurt by the one part of your shears, and that actually forced the development of that young adventitious bud to develop at the top part of your stub, and you actually wanted to develop on the bottom part and make a nice more flat branch. So it's important to turn your shears around. Okay, there you can see just a one that was done the previous season. It was cut there, and there was a nice lateral branch that came out there. Okay, so the effect of that drastic measures is very, very good. You can get a very nice columnar tree now. You can see the strong leader develop up there, and you get. It's very nice to work with this columnar type of tree in a high density planting. And I also thought, if I read, you guys sometimes have to get rid of your fruit, your crop, in a very cost effective way. If I read Leviticus 19:23, I just realized, this might be something that you guys can use to both get rid of the unwanted crop, but also to get this nice, better development when you have an insufficient winter chill situation. So yes, it leaves the apical leader now growing in a dominant position, and your regrowth is a large number of vigorous growing 1-year shoots. All your shoots are now almost the same age, and I lost my crop now very cost efficiently. If that is something that one wants, you get a very uniform relation in terms of the trunk. Your bearing locations is now mostly apical in apple. So your subsequent yield, however, is postponed or largely reduced. That was the following problem that we had to face. Sorry. Because you cut off all the branches. So if you look at the situation, where you did get your increase in height now, you sort of lost your situation of cropping, because in normal situation, you would have had a crop in your 3rd leaf, and now in your 4th leaf, you will have a sort of a smallish type of crop. So the problem we had was, isn't this possible to take this positive situation and increase our apical bearing positions to get this situation and you get a higher crop in our 4th leaf, if then you have to postpone it to the 4th leaf. So the treatment that really worked was, again, the use of Maxel, where we did not spray the top part of the tree, only the bottom part. That was 50 mils per liter Maxel, 950 milligrams per liter 6BA. And there's just my date. I did it in terms of your calendar. I did it in middle of June. And so it is in your peak season. What happened was actually stunned us, because we got a nice extension of that lateral shoot, but we also got lateral breaks in the same season, in that growing season. Here you can see just the branch of the control did not show any development, lateral development in that season. Whereas in that same season, we got very nice lateral breaks. There's just another example, another cultivar Goldens. It was also very, very exciting for us to see that all those lateral branches ended up being fruitful. There's just an example of how the branch grew from that stub that we cut it. It grew until there, when it was sprayed, and extended further and made the lateral branches in that same season. There you can see another photo. So it was not 2 seasons growth that you see, but only 1 season of growth. And it was very nice to see that it worked on Rogala, for example. There you can see the effect, both in the numbers of tree shoots with branching, as well as the number of breaks, as well as the Goldens. You can see it there as well. The next year, in another orchard, we repeated it, got the same effect. There's just an example on Fuji, where you can also see the long lateral shoot in the top photo of the control. At the bottom, the photo is of the treated one. All of them were fruitful, which was very exciting. And there you can see the fruitlets. And the nice thing was we really increased our potential sites. There you can see on a control branch where you only had your apical fruits setting, whereas in the Maxel treatment, you now have much more sites and much more higher crop. I measured the crop in the Rogala, where you can get lateral set of your fruit. There you can see it was an increase of about 23%, whereas in the Golden Way, which does not really set laterally, it was a much higher increase. In conclusion, of all these applications, I think the possibilities to use gibberellin in directing growth of young apple trees are vast, even if the total plant growth is not affected. Lead extension growth can be increased almost twofold at the expense of basal lateral extension. What was interesting of that trial was that the total growth of your tree does not increase. It is just directed to your leader growth. Polling trees in Israel might give the grower the benefit of a cost-efficient way to remove an unwanted crop, as well as increasing the apical development of a more slender canopy. And treatment with that 6BA can increase the number of shoots with same-season branching, as well as the number of branchings per shoot, thereby increasing the subsequent crop and achieving both short and long-term goals regarding the income per hectare in areas with insufficient winter chilling. So I just want to acknowledge all the people that helped me. Yes, any questions from your side?
I have a question.
Somewhere.
First of all, we don't have the GA1, GA7. So we try to spray the tip with Superlon, you know, with cytokinin as well. Do you have any experience with that? That's the first one. Second, we tried in the nursery to get more shoots. So we sprayed with Maxel to the tip once in 2 weeks. And if you maybe, or Superlon, we tried both of them. So if you have any experience with that in the field. And third, when you want to cut your shoots, you're waiting, you don't do any winter pruning, right? You just prune them on June and then make them uniform. That's my 3 questions.
Yeah, there's quite a handful of questions, Omer. I will try from the last one side. In our young trees, we actually only prune in springtime, and not really in wintertime, except when we look at our leaders and we want to stimulate our leaders to start growing, then we tip them or head the leader. In terms of that Maxel that you spray to get a selective branching in your nursery, yes, that is. I was often, wondering whether my branching was selective or proleptic, but I'm convinced they were more proleptic because the lateral buds actually, the auxiliary buds actually developed first before they started growing again. So it was not really a selective branch that developed there, but it must be some. But I think the effect, because I tried the same concentrations on a vertical branch, and I did not get the effect. But those branches are all lateral branches which are growing more sort of horizontal, and I think that also played a role with why I got the more pronounced effect. You said you only you don't have GA4 and 7, but I think in my trials I also used GA3. Do you have GA3 or not?
Yeah, GA3 we have. No problem.
But I think you can use that. If you don't have GA4 and 7, you can use GA3.
Okay.
But you can use it also at the 400 grams per liter or 400 milligrams per liter active. That will give you a similar result in terms of evening out growth or increasing leader growth. That stronger concentration, the 600 milligrams per liter, I only use if I spray a total tree, from the top to bottom. Otherwise, you get sort of deviations of normal growth. But the 400 is fine. So you can use that. The other question you had was the mixture between the GA4 and 7, for example, and Maxel. That is Promelin.
Promelin, yeah.
Yeah, the trade name. But funny enough, I did not get the same result. I did not get the same result if I had the additive Maxel, because that is one of the trials that the Americans once did, made me think that the answer might lie in the GA4 and 7, and that was why I looked at that. And so funny enough, I did not get the same lead extension with Promelin that I got with GA4 and 7 or with the GA3. So if I want lead extension, I will mostly focus on the GA3 if I were you guys.
Okay.
All right.
More question from other people. I have another question, but
Okay, go ahead, Omer.
Another thing, we in order to make the tree grow fast, we do a lot of in our trials we do a lot of summer pruning. So we come in and we cut, I don't know, every 1 month, every month, every 2 months. But according to what you are saying, it's not necessary. Or...
I don't think so, Mayor. I got a reduction in growth with the summer pruning. I think it has to do with my root development. If I remove branches with summer pruning, I actually send a signal to my roots that the equilibrium is fine. You know, they don't need to develop further. So I try not to do summer pruning and rather to direct my growth.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, other people if they have questions.
All right, I have a question. First of all, do you use any general dormancy breaking agents on your
Yes.
young trees or mature trees like Dormex or oils or whatever? And
Yes.
how much do they help with the establishing of nice young trees? And the other question, just technical question, the 950 milligrams per liter, is it the active ingredient or is it the commercial compound?
Yeah, that is the active ingredient.
Active ingredient.
Yeah, the active ingredient, yeah. To answer your question regarding the the rest breaking, yes, we do a lot of work with the rest breaking. The one that is we have recently started using a lot of the soya oils. It is soya oil that is just developed, you know, from soya beans, with a very good result. I don't really understand why it works so well, because you can actually reduce your percentage of oil. And normally, if you look at mineral oil, you cannot really reduce your percentage. So the one mixture that I am currently very comfortable with is 1% of Dormex, 2% of the improved oil. Sorry.
Answer again.
So it is 1% Dormex, 2% of the soya oil, and 3% of calcium nitrate. We did a lot of work with calcium nitrate. We normally, you know, if you look at the literature, the people mostly used potassium nitrate. But we realized that the action of is really the nitrate. So we are mostly calcium nitrate.
What?
If that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
עוד שאלות חבר'ה, יש להם שעוד?
Until somebody asks a question, I just want to say thank you. It was very interesting. Thank you for your time.
No, it's 100% alone.
Anton.
Yes, Omer.
I will ask. We are just for the dormancy breaking. We use ammonium nitrate. You can't, I guess.
Okay.
You don't have any ammonium nitrate.
Yeah, we do. I've just never played around with it.
Okay, so you just try the calcium nitrate and it works good.
Yes. I think if you, for example, I played with oil, only oil and calcium nitrate. It was not strong enough. So with apples, I like to add my Dormex.
I'll try to mute the people that are talking. Yeah, okay. I muted them.
Okay. So what I found was you get a lot of phyto because often people do not look at the weather, and they sometimes they wet it too much, and you get phyto in your young trees. So that was why we started playing around with actually having an effective rest breaking, but a mixture that is less phytotoxic. It does sound like a paradox, but we found that it really works.
And you do it off also grown-up trees? Not only...
No, I only use that mixture for the young trees, because what you will see if you play around with that is you get a very fast development, very fast. And with a young tree, I want the fast development to again increase my competition and reduce the chances of a branch that jumps out on its own. But with my adult tree, my bearing tree, I am not so much focused on maximum breaks, but on maximum crop. So I want to give my bees enough time to work.
Okay, understand. Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you.
100%. Okay, Mayor.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there's no other questions, I will stop.
יש למישהו עוד שאלות?
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So, Anton.
Yes.
Yeah, so you don't have any other presentation, or you have another one?
No, only the two, yeah.
Okay. So,
Anton.
Thank you very much. I think you gave us excellent points. We are just dealing with exactly the same things, and we see the same phenomenon in our orchards, mostly in the Galilee. It's a bit warm, and we get exactly what you're saying. Lots of blind wood and lots of problems with growth.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely try it. And I will be in touch with you.
100%.
Something I want to try, and I'll be in touch with you, so we will help me.
100%. And come visit so that I can show you.
Yeah, you have COVID, or you finished, or you're okay?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
No, in South Africa, not you specifically.
You mean?
What's the COVID situation in your country now?
They have now closed the beaches as well, so we are very angry that the beaches are closed for the holiday season. But I don't think it's as negative as the people put it. There are fatalities, but I think much less if